Welcome to the Say It Skillfully podcast, where I, Molly Chang, talk with leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, elite athletes, artists, and professionals like you who open up about what's been hard, defining moments and learnings, and finding their true north and succeeding on their terms. I believe one can have it all in life, though not at the same time. Much has been written on weaving together work and life, and my esteemed guest today has been immersed in this topic for more than 4 decades. Inspired by his first child's birth, he looked inward at his own purpose and how he'd make the world a safe place for his newborn. He became an award winning Wharton professor and best-selling author and founded Wharton's leadership program and its work life integration project in 1991. In 2000, he launched Total Leadership while on leave from Wharton, serving as the senior executive at Ford Motor Company for leadership development globally. Thinkers 50 named him the world's number one thinker in the field of talent, and the Families and Work Institute gave him its coveted Work Life Legacy Award, a leading voice for change in social and corporate policy to harmonize work and life. A renowned speaker and host of a popular Sirius XM radio show himself, he's now emeritus status at Wharton after 40 years and adored like a rock star professor, as cited by the New York Times. I am thrilled and honored to welcome my friend Stu Friedman to the show. Sue, welcome to Say It Skillfully.
Molly, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's really a joy. We've been trying. I looked at this. We tried to do this maybe 2 years ago. So I just want to thank you for persevering
Mm,
with me to make this possible.
back at you.
Yep. I mean, like I was like, it's gonna happen. It's meant to be. You're a superstar, and I just needed to have you on the show. So, listen, you have championed that leadership in business cannot be only about business, right? It has to be about life as a whole. But way before your whole adult life, I'm just wondering, as a kid, to what extent business was a part of your upbringing. I mean, my dad was an engineer, and the word business never came up at home. So, what was it like for young Stu?
My family was not, my immediate family was not a business life. Uh, Both my parents are artists. My mother was an actress, a playwright, a painter, a poet, uh, and my father was a photographer who cut hair for a living. So ours was anything but, you know, a classic business environment. My grandparents were small business owners, all immigrants to the United States, and so I knew something about the rough and tumble world of um, retail from them. But no, the idea of a business life, a business career, especially when I got into my college years at Harper College, State University of New York at Binghamton. Um, I majored in drugs and music, which which had very little, if anything, to do with what was happening in the classes I was occasionally attending. So the concept of a business life or me ending up at the Wharton School, 10 years later was as far as I could possibly imagine my future unfolding.
So, immigrant, my family came from overseas. Where did your family immigrate from?
Eastern Europe, Russia, Poland, Ukraine.
And do you recall stories hearing much about that?
Yeah, yeah. Much of what I was interested in, though, they found it difficult to talk about because it was so painful. They're Holocaust refugees. Not all, but that was a big part of my upbringing was the stories of people who did not survive the Holocaust who were in our family, and implicitly the idea I think was a part of my DNA was how important it was to embrace this wonderful country for what it is, to cherish it, and to make the most of my life. I didn't really hear that consciously, but I think that was a part of what what shaped my identity.
Yeah. Did you have siblings too?
I have a younger sister and a younger brother,
Mhm.
uh, both of whom are fascinating people who do really interesting work. My younger brother is an actor who you would probably recognize. And my sister is a clinical social worker and a fabric artist, among many other talents.
Wow. So this, the immigrant families, from what your father did, how was it financially in the household? Did we feel like we had enough
Mm.
money, or I'm just curious?
I never had the sense of want. We did not have, abundance, but nor did we have, you know, um, the sense that food and shelter were going to be a struggle. So I would characterize my socioeconomic status growing up as working class.
Yeah. Yeah. So this the major in school, or just school in general, did
Mhm.
was that education focus a big thing? Your parents artists, or did you just kind of like plod along through school?
Well, I was the first in my family to graduate from college. So, they didn't really have an idea about what that whole world was about. I went to public schools in New York City. I'm from Brooklyn. I went to Brooklyn Technical High School, Brooklyn Tech. And then in my last year, I transferred to my local high school, which was Midwood, which is where I graduated from. Um, and the process of applying to college, which was a very different thing in 1970. Uh, I applied to the state's university schools,
Mm.
and that was it. And I made no visits. The whole process took I don't know, an hour and a half, maybe two. Uh, I had a scholarship from the state, based on a standardized test score, and so I was going to some state school, and it was not something that any of us really paid a lot of attention to. In certainly not in a careerist, mindset. There was nothing that of that sort. I think my mother's parting words for me when they dropped me off in the dorm that first day was, "Don't smoke too much pot." Um, that was really it. So, so I don't know. Am I answering your question, Molly? You getting a
Yeah,
picture?
yeah, I get the picture. So the idea of going to college, since it wasn't coming from the home, like because you could see other things that you could have done, right? So did you just you're like, I'm gonna do it? Did you have some other kid you're following along who was doing the same
Mm.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, my peers we were all going to college somewhere. It was sort of standard in our social milieu, and I was good at school. I was good in high school. Um, at Brooklyn Tech, I did well in classes there and was really interested in architecture, which you could study there. Um, but then, as I said, in my last year, I transferred to my local high school because at the time there were no girls at Brooklyn Tech when I went there.
Yeah.
And by the time I reached like junior, senior year, I realized that I wanted to be in a school with girls. And so I just left tech. And then that was also when I discovered, uh, you know, marijuana and, other things in life beyond school. So my senior year, I was a terrible student in high school, but I'd managed, to get decent enough grades to get into Harper College, partly on a tennis scholarship. I also played tennis in high school. So um, when I got there, I really struggled with how to think of myself in any way as a scholar. That was definitely not a part of my identity at the time. I was just trying to figure out what life was about and who I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to be a physician, so I started on that path. But then I failed organic chemistry twice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, one time the professor threw me out because I raised my goggles to read, a beaker, because I couldn't see it, it was all fogging up, and he just yanked me by the collar and took me into a side room and showed me pictures of people's, faces being destroyed by chemical reactions in organic chem labs, and he said, "I can't risk this, get out." So I think that was the end of my medical career.
So I just have to say, I was a chemical engineer in school, and organic, I could make those molecules form anything. I really could not have studied and become a doctor. I found that, like, brutal, and I have to say we share a passion for tennis. I literally just came back from watching the French Open, so I'm
Mm.
that you,
Yeah, I've long been a deep, deep fan of tennis. My father played, and he, I had the benefit of, having lessons in Brooklyn when it was not, this is pre-open era.
yeah.
Nobody played tennis. It was definitely seen as an effete, sport that not, real boys, real men didn't engage. But I loved it and still do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a coach, and we were gymnasts as kids, and I picked it up as an adult, and I only started lessons because my sisters were taking lessons. I gotta take lessons. I don't want to get left behind. And so my coach had made it. She had actually in Palo Alto made it to the quarters of Wimbledon, so she knew what was going on. And since she saw someone, we have good, body awareness. So she had no bad habits, and she literally just kind of was able to start from scratch. She'd say, "Do this," and I would do it. But the tennis thing for me, and you'll get this, is it really was a metaphor for life. And as a young person, if you're not doing well, you either have to get it together and figure it out, or just hand the racket to your opponent and just end the game. It was really a
Mm,
way to help me, like this microcosm of life, right? There's a lot of ups and downs, and you got to be
mm,
able to navigate it, believe in yourself, and all that. So I'm very grateful to the sport of tennis. I mean, I didn't
mm.
start young like you, so I look like I started as an adult, but it's still like a very, meaningful part of my adult life.
Well, I'm more a fan than a player. I haven't played in years, and when I played in high school, I was okay, and I once I got to college, even though that was a part of how I got in, that the tennis coach said, "Oh, let's." I was like on the wait list, and I think because I was playing tennis at high school, that helped me get over the hump of
Yeah.
being admitted. But I did not go to a single practice or ever play for the college team.
Mm.
I played music. I had taken music lessons and piano and guitar, and when I got to college, I taught myself how to play bass guitar so I could be in a band, and I spent a lot of time on that. And our band played just about every bar in Binghamton, New York by the time I had graduated. And I learned a lot about myself, about life, about um, meaningful connections with other people. That's what I was discovering. As an avid reader, I read, lots. Literature was my second. It was my minor. Psychology was my major, um, and continue to have deep interest in both of those areas.
Yeah, I could see you rocking in a band. So Stu, going way back, what did you learn about yourself through the music and the f
Well, I learned that questions about the meaning of life, philosophy, religion, and of course psychology, they really they captured my imagination, and I was keen to figure out what my answer to those questions, to that essential question, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Uh, th- it- I- that that became a kind of point of focus for me, um, and remains so. I think that's probably the most important kind of big idea, but I also learned that music is kind of my home, and I feel a great, ineffable kind of soulful connection to music of all kinds,
Mhm.
and how it just taps into something that is essentially human, and makes connection among and between people, uh, so very rich.
Yeah, music has a universality about it. transcending, language and all. Do you have favorite band or groups?
Oh my gosh. Where do I begin? Do y'all know who the Beatles are? I don't know. Love the Beatles growing up. All kinds of rock and roll music, folk, rock, jazz. I've been, Springsteen devotee for, 50 years.
Oh my god.
Even wrote about him in one of my books. Did a
Oh.
short biography of him, along with 5 other interesting people to illustrate some of the ideas in my total leadership model. So that was a lot of fun, and had a chance to give him a copy of that book when I went to see him, on Broadway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Springsteen has stayed with me, Jackson Browne, those folks, my peers, they're like my older brothers, um, and have, certainly helped me to make sense of my life through their their words, their music, their
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah. Yeah. Jackson Brown's Running on Empty is just like eternally emblazed in my brain. It's one of my faves.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's not even in my top 3 of Jackson's, oeuvre, but it's definitely an important one. I saw a number of those shows, from that tour. Um, yeah, and he remains, he continues to, fight the good fight and to play the great music and to help people, uh, he has an important social consciousness and has been expressing his uh, his passion, his compassion, through his music in powerful ways, since the beginning. Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant, brilliant, beautiful artist.
So inspiring. Okay, so you're in college. You're
Are people really going to be interested in any of this, Molly?
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun to talk
this
about it with you,
is
but
gonna
really,
be no,
okay.
it's great because
Um,
this is the thing. Now we're wondering, you end up in like, I mean, Wharton isn't like some minor, oh, never heard of them, right? So here you are in college. Not necessarily, I mean, you knew you were gonna go. You're diving into music and all that. So were you like, I gotta get a job? Like what was the program to kind of once got through your university years?
well, I I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no real plan. So when I graduated, uh, I went camping with a friend for a month or so, and then I thought, well, I guess I have to get a job. So I got a job at a summer camp. I was a tennis coach at a summer camp up in Massachusetts, and I met someone there. We ended up living together in Brooklyn, and I drove a taxi. That was my first job after college. Was a taxi driver, New York City. Um, and that was an education. My gosh. Yeah, including the realization that, I don't wanna be doing this my whole life. Although one of my grandfathers did. That was his job. Um, but I didn't I whoa, that's hard. Uh, and I would, I love words and literature, and so I'd pass the time. I had a dictionary with me, and at red lights, I'd learn a new word. So that was how I got through. And also being overly generous in letting, other cars and people, have the right of way, which startled many people on the streets of New York when I would say, "Go ahead, cross." Um, you know, having a buzz throughout that process was, pretty much every day was definitely helpful. Um, but I realized, okay, I got to do something different. So I studied for the graduate record exams. I got a
Mhm.
good score on that, thinking, okay, I'm going to go and get a graduate degree. But uh, ended up not exactly doing that. This partner of mine at the time, we ended up just picking up all of our stuff and packing it into our car and leaving New York. Um, Her mother had just died, and we put all of our stuff in a car and took off to find another place. We didn't even know where. So we camped all over the country, 3 months on the road, until I finally crashed the car in Kenora, Ontario. Yeah, uh, and ended up flying. Put all of our stuff in a couple of duffel bags and flew back to the city and said, "Okay, now what?" And found jobs at a psychiatric hospital in Vermont, which is where I went and spent the next 3 years learning, in the clinic,
Oh, nice.
uh, a lot of really interesting things, including the nascent field of behavioral medicine, where we were doing biofeedback and meditation to help people deal with pain. I worked with a chronic schizophrenic population for a while, and the physician faculty, the psychologists there, they saw potential in me and said, "Hey, you should do more of this." And so to different. I applied to one place to get a master's in counseling psychology, which was near the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park, because that's where she wanted to go. She
Oh,
did go. So I followed her there, but then we broke up soon after that. But I was in this counseling program at SUNY New Paltz, another state university, and it was there that that I really came alive because I had a much clearer sense of what I was interested in, and the faculty there were very nurturing and challenging. And I was reading everything, I was writing well and getting, really positive feedback. I was super active in class. Whereas as an undergraduate, I did not ever, ever speak in class. This gets to the core of what your show is about, I think, but speaking up. I was terrified. As an undergrad, never once ever spoke in class in 4 years. I think that's a true statement. Of course, I can't remember, it's 50 plus years ago, but I don't think I ever spoke. But when I got to New Paltz and I'm studying, varieties of religious experience and, Freudian psychology and all kinds, it was just the full range, existential theories. And I was so excited about what I was doing there. And in the second year, uh, the the chair of the department said, "Why don't you teach a section of the intro psych class?" So in September of 1979, I walked into a classroom, 20 freshmen, and I had the textbook, and I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I figured it out, and it was, whoa, this is where I belong. This is where I belong. In the front of the room, entertaining, as well as dealing with questions, fundamental questions about the meaning of life, how our minds work, and helping other people, which was something I always knew I wanted to do. Mainly because I was trying to help myself
mm,
figure out who I was after having, grown up in a family of artists who were figuring out what they were trying to do with their lives and not
oh,
paying, all the attention they probably ought to have for their kids'
kids.
development. Um, Admittedly, they would have both said that. Um, so, that was magical. And then I realized, okay, I want to be a college professor. This is what I have to do. And the faculty, they were like, yeah, you can do this. You can totally do this. And they helped me. And so I applied to PhD programs. And in both clinical psychology as well as in other areas, because my range of knowledge about the different fields of psychology, social psychology, organizational psychology, it was growing. And I got into clinical programs as well as social and organizational psychology programs. And at one interview for a clinical program on Long Island at one of the premier programs in psychoanalytic theory clinical psychoanalytic theory at Adelphi, they had a group interview for the finalist candidates. So like 10 of us. And we sat in a room for like all day on a Saturday, and two faculty members are just observing us. Our clinical acumen and our capacity to, grasp the interpersonal dynamics and speak to them in intelligent ways. And um, but it was entering that room and seeing this incredibly beautiful woman sitting across from the entryway that you know that was the most important aspect of that day, because she's now my wife of 44 years. Um, yeah, so I just fell in love immediately. I think the feeling was mutual. You'd have to ask her, I think. But we ended up riding the train home together into Manhattan, where both of our parents were now living. She had just finished her undergrad, and neither of us got into that program. But on the train ride back to Manhattan from Garden City, we were really connected. We talked about all the other candidates and agreed about each and every one of them in our evaluation. So we had a very similar kind of worldview and shared set of values, you might say. Um, and we corresponded, and she was going to the University of Michigan. I was going to the University of Chicago on a full
Mhm.
scholarship in their social and organizational psychology program, because by now I had sort of established, you know, my credentials
Yep,
worthy of that.
yep.
Uh, but then we ended up going on a date at the beginning of June, just about now, as we were about to go off. I was going to go to the University of Chicago to work in the social psych lab before classes started.
Yeah.
And we go on this date, and then 2 weeks later, she was coming with me to Chicago for the summer because she had nothing to do it until classes started at Michigan. And 2 weeks after that, I proposed to her on the shores of Lake Michigan. She said yes. We jumped in the lake, and then I quit Chicago and followed her to Michigan, which was
Amazing.
a great career move, because Michigan was amazing. Of course, I had no idea. Once again, I'm just following her.
Yeah.
Uh, I knew very little about what was happening there, but when I got there, it was magic. The Especially the other students who were a year or two ahead of me, it was very much a place that was run by the students, but the faculty there they had founded the field, and there were all kinds of remarkable, you know, really passionate, brilliant scholars trying to make a difference in the world, trying to change the way organizations worked and how it affected people's lives. And it was absolutely thrilling, and I really thrived there. So that's how I ended up getting, a good job at the Wharton School. I also had an offer from the Harvard Business School, and I'm glad I took the one at Wharton.
How did you decide?
Well, I knew that I was going to have more freedom at Wharton. At Harvard, at least back then, it's pretty hierarchical, and you were like assigned a senior faculty member, and it was more like an apprenticeship in the early years, and I didn't want that.
Yeah,
I'd had enough of being a graduate student,
yeah.
so I figured I was ready. I wasn't, but um, uh, but that was the reason.
Did you have this sounds so magical, the move. Were there any moments of doubt or question, like, "Is this the field for me? Am I good enough?" Or were you just, like, on a roll?
Oh, I think what was most important about the incredible luck that I had in ending up where I ended up was that when I experienced a moment of like an epiphany, the knowledge that, oh, this is what it's about. Like when I was in the classroom. for the first time, and I made it come alive for me and the students in the way that I just did did the session. Or when I met, my wife for the first time, when I realized, oh, so this is it. Those moments, and there were others, a few others that have followed. Um, I did not ignore those moments
Mhm.
and their meaning to me. As the saying goes, leaned into them and followed them. I I I I I, I changed direction to go with what was, igniting my soul, uh, and that has made all the difference, to be alive enough, conscious enough, uh, naive enough, to be attending to the experiences that were, you know, really turning me on,
Yeah.
to who I could be, and to follow those. That's what led, I think, to ultimately, what has been for me a much richer life than I would have ever imagined growing up. So I don't think I'm answering your question exactly. Um, Doubt, you know, all along. I mean, I started out just not having any clue. Uh, and I'm still, I'll be 72 next month. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I
Uh,
love that. You're just
uh,
lifelong
I mean, I'm at
learner.
a new foundation level. I'm starting, not
Yeah.
at the beginning, but it's still all about discovery.
So what
Trying,
lights you up? This clearly the student and the interaction is like just this moves you. What is it about that, you know, role and interaction that really just lights you up so much?
yeah, I've thought some about this, and I don't think I have a great answer, but I feel very much alive when I'm in front of the room, and leading a conversation about uh, things that I think are really important, and I think that many other people think are important too. How do we find harmony in our lives? How do we do good with what we've got? How do we make a difference as leaders in our lives, in the different parts of our lives, um, and in a way that creates a greater sense of harmony within ourselves and in our world? I mean, these are important matters, and they they inspire me. But to try to do well by my clients, students, um, because they're seeking too.
Yeah.
We're seekers, and so I take that to be, you know, um, a serious pursuit. But I also try to bring humor and humility to the task. What what makes me come alive there is that I have discovered that I can I'm very curious about what's inside other people because I'm curious about what's inside of me. I mean, that's where it began, as you kindly evoked from me 20 minutes ago. And that's, it's my interest in other people's lives and minds and choices that it's motivated by my asking these questions continually. And I seem to be, good at asking other people questions that other people are interested in as well. So it's in the interaction, the kind of Socratic interaction, that I feel like I'm just being myself, and it's where I'm meant to be. And it's the same on the radio show and my podcast. As an interviewer, I know how to pay attention. I've practiced that. I've trained in that. I've learned that many years. Lots of coaching, lots of observation of other people. But it's also just something that's inherently a part of how my mind seems to work. Um, and so you know, being in the professorial role and then also learning that I was, competent as a scholar and had something to give as a writer, um, uh, it gives me a chance to be interacting with other people, be performing,
Yeah.
like my family of performing artists,
Yeah.
my mother especially, and my brother and my sister. My father as a photographer, it's a different kind of art
Yeah.
experience. Um, but he, as someone who cut hair, was brilliant at that
Yeah.
and was really gifted in being able to see boundary lines and how to form shapes that were powerful and really captured your mind. So I think I'm able to give expression to what it means to engage with other people in real time where there's risk
Yeah.
because there's kind of a script, but so much of it is improvisation. Uh, and so I think there's that element of it, and I can see that what I'm doing is, at least the intention, and often the result is helping other people find freedom in their own lives and to discover who they are becoming and want to become, and that's extremely gratifying. Um, but yeah, I think at the core of it, it is the moment of creative interaction
Mm.
and mind expansion that is really what ignites my interest and feels so good. It's kind of like music.
Yeah, it really fascinating to listen to you because these parts of your life, come together in such an organized way, but with not necessarily having that intention. And what I'm really feeling is just you've given yourself permission to like figure out and be you. And that, it seemed like such an obvious thing, but still a lot of folks, that's really hard. They're like, well, maybe I want to be this, but everyone else is doing that.
Oh
And
yeah,
I think that part of I was really joyful about having you on because I can tell like that ability to say, this is right for me, which doesn't mean it's not, you're not trying to make it for everyone else. But I just want to encourage for listeners that, getting to know ourselves for who we really are is a lifetime's journey because it's
it
a new
really
me every
is.
day, right? It's a new me every day. But there's these step points. And when I think only when one can really come to grips with that can you be as much service as you are to others? Because like you're modeling it like in the best way. It seems so natural to you. So that's as a young person, I'm really impressed with that. You're just this innate curiosity. I got to go there, not worried necessarily about the other people wouldn't think that that's the path to go or whatever. It just doesn't seem like that really dawned on you. Like, wait a second, I'm supposed to be, X, Y, or Z. And these kids these days going to university or applying and then their jobs, and I feel very bad for them because it seems
Sure.
like so much pressure.
Oh
You
my
got to do
gosh.
this, right? That's really marvelous.
It's a shame that that is now the dominant, mindset of most young people, at least in our country, in a certain social class. That was just not the way it was
Yeah.
50 years ago. It was very, very different,
Yeah.
and so I wasn't unusual
Yeah.
in being, uh, sort of unconstrained by career imperatives. That was countercultural.
Yeah.
If you were interested in the business world, at least in my social milieu, that was frowned upon. That's not what we were doing.
Yeah.
Now at least that's how I saw it.
Right.
I had a couple of friends who were, interested in business or were going to business school. What?
What?
Why would you do that?
Right. Right.
But
So
I did yes, sorry.
yeah, it's all good. So I'm curious because again, I haven't worked inside an academic institution. You hear how they can be very political and very structured. So I'm curious how Stu navigated, if there was a lot to navigate, or you were so early and you were kind of paving the way. Did
Mm,
you have to deal with frustration of politics and that sort of thing?
yes. There's so much I could tell you about that, Molly. I can't really. At least not now. Um, but, you know, uh, let's put it this way, when I went to Ford, so
Mhm.
in the late '90s, um, I'd gotten some attention because, well, for 2 things, and as you mentioned, in 1991, I started our first leadership program at
Right.
Wharton, for both undergrads and MBAs,
Yeah.
and then the second year after that was just the MBA program and just launching that whole thing and
Yeah.
building in, how you learn about leading in a team environment by being in a team that's doing real work together over the course of the whole first year and making that work for 800 students from all over the world. That was significant, and it we went through a lot of iterations before we got it even close to right, but we did eventually get it pretty right enough for, our work to be, cited as part of the reason why Business Week had us at the number 1 spot among business schools in the late
Ah,
'90s. But I was also, engaged in starting, a program to research and practice and teach practical knowledge about how to integrate work and the rest of life, inspired, to really, really lean into that by the arrival of my first child, which was 36 years ago. And so I'm doing both of those things. And because I was a man at the Wharton School of Finance, which is how it used to be known, that was the name is, if I'm not mistaken. Um, talking about families and children, uh, I was distinctive in that way
uh,
because in the nascent days of the work life movement, let's call it, it was 99% women who
mhm.
were involved, both as advocates, consultants, government people, operatives within companies,
Right.
scholars, researchers. It was almost all women, and I stood out and got a lot of attention because of that. So all this, by the end of the '90s, I'd gotten on the radar at Ford where they were trying to make a big change in the culture of that 100-year-old company, and I was asked with 30 other senior executives to join the company as part of a cultural change initiative to bring in fresh blood from different industries and all. So arriving there was a great shock to my system because now Hallie, my wife, and I were returning to Michigan, but now we had 3 kids, and I'm a Ford senior executive. So, we've got the little McMansion and a development outside of Ann Arbor, as opposed to the 800 square foot A-frame that we bought for $36,000 in 1981,
Love it.
when we were graduate students. And all this is to say that it was a great shock to go into a senior executive role, which I had some knowledge of, but I had no freaking clue, really. Um, I ended up having 50 people in my organization, another 50 contractors, a real boss, like a real serious, fantastic person, David Murphy, who was the head of human resources globally for the
Wow.
company. Um, and but he was an officer of the Ford Motor Company and a 30-year veteran, and he expected a lot from me. And I wasn't used to that. So I had so much to learn, and really did learn a ton, uh, and was radically changed in how I saw just about everything in life as a result of that few years. But then when I went back to Wharton, because my kids wanted to go back, that's
Wow.
a whole nother story. But there was another important moment of listening to my heart and following it.
Mhm.
My first son arrived. I realized, okay, I've got to do something to make the world a safe one for him to grow up in. And that's how I really got into the whole work in life, research, practice, teaching. Uh, and then returning to Wharton was motivated by my kids saying, we want to go back home.
Mm.
So I did, and then when I returned, and I remember, one of the first faculty meetings I went to, some group, I can't remember what we were studying, but we're sitting around this table for like 2 hours. And I thought, okay, this meeting would have lasted about a minute and a half where I just was. Wow. Wow. Like, I thought that the shift from, being a consultant academic, because 'cause I'd been my dissertation research was about succession management and talent
Mhm.
management and how companies cultivate leadership talent across the Fortune 500. I did a large scale study of that, and that's what I was spending the 80s doing, writing about succession, CEO succession, talent management at the top of companies, and I was consulting with companies on that. So now I go back, after having learned something about how to be an executive by being in that role, getting tons of coaching from a lot of different sources. I was figuring it out and, inventing the total leadership model there with the support of some remarkable minds and great people, and then launching that and learning about that and, a new model of leadership from the point of view of the whole person, which fit what the company needed at the time. It was absolutely thrilling to be involved in that work and to have the opportunity to do all that and to learn something about how to, adopt an executive mindset. Um, but then returning to the academic world, which was
Mm.
so much slower. I was I thought the shock of return was greater than the shock of arrival. So this doesn't exactly answer your question about the political dynamics of an academic life, which I'm punting on,
Yes.
because it's just too much. But it's an entirely different world, and maybe my little story helps to illustrate that idea.
Yeah, I get it, I get it,
Takes
and
it takes adjustment.
yeah, I got it. I'm, so we're in this world, fast forward 2024. And I, like, fully embrace the things that you talk about in your books, and I think a lot of folks would say, we're not exactly experiencing total leadership, we're not, integrating our lives. So, just
Mm,
be real about the present state, what
mm.
can people in the companies do? Because I think if we're waiting for all the leaders to have an epiphany, we'll be dead off the planet before that happens. So, what can we how can we think about this in a way that's constructive, that we can make it
Mm.
better, so that really people can thrive, in their whole life as their whole selves?
It's a big question, Molly.
Mhm.
Um, none of us can wave a magic wand and make the world a peaceful one overnight, but nor is any one of us absolved of the responsibility to try. I think this is the wisdom of the ages that you hear many people talk about, and indeed, it is in the effort
Mhm.
to try that we experience life, in a meaningful way. So, we do what we can to try to take action that is conscious, deliberate, intentional, mindful, and directed towards uh, doing using our talents and our opportunities and our privilege as best we can to have a positive impact on the world. Not everyone wants to do that, of course,
Mhm.
but anyone can make a choice to pursue that idea.
Yeah.
And we now have enough evidence 2 decades plus into working on this total leadership model where people look to explore and identify, many for the first time, what their core values really are, what their vision of the future really looks like, and what's important to them in the different parts of their lives, their work, their home, their community, and their selves, their private selves of mind, body, and spirit, looking to see who matters most in their lives at work, at home, and in the community, people who are a part of that vision of a better tomorrow, learning more about how to connect with those people through genuine dialogue and practicing those skills of talking with people in the different parts of your life to better understand your mutual needs and expectations, and then seeing that social system as an organic thing that you can actually influence,
Yeah.
and then experimenting with new ways of getting things done that are designed specifically, innovations, to have a positive demonstrable impact on results and performance at work and at home. and in the community and for yourself. No or in that statement. People practice doing that in the laboratory of their real lives, and they come out reflecting on what they've tried to create meaningful, sustainable change. Sustainable because it works for not just one part, but for all the parts. And they realize there are more opportunities to do that, to bring what I've got to bring to the world
Yeah.
in a way that is good for me and good for my people, the people that I choose to matter. And when you take that approach, you are bound to be thinking in a way that is not selfless, but also not selfish. It's about, you know, a fundamental leadership idea of trying to advance your idea for
Yeah.
what a better world is like in a way that also enhances your own value.
Yeah.
Doing what's good and what is right, and that helps you and the people that you care about. And I believe that the more people who adopt this mindset and think about their impact in all the different parts of their lives, including the community, which is
Mhm.
beyond work and family
Mhm.
and self, that we are bound to have a world that is a little bit more peaceful, even if that just begins with within yourself. Right, that's where it really starts and ends, trying to find a bit more peace, a bit more harmony within yourself, but then bringing that way of thinking, of being, into your social interactions, wherever you are, at work, at home, and in the community, is bound to have a somewhat positive impact, and that's what our evidence shows, tens of thousands of people in.
Yeah.
So we can't solve everything, but we can try to solve what we can try to solve, and helping people to find more creative, more meaningful ways of doing that in their own lives is a very gratifying you know project to be a part of.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, thank you.
I
Yeah,
feel very
yeah.
fortunate.
That's Stu, this is, what you've so eloquently laid out, I affectionately call it do the work. And
Mm,
it starts within. It starts with each and every one of us. And we're not telling you you have to, but we're saying if you want to be whole with yourself, and do what have an impact on the world in a way that I think everyone out there can. It does take doing the work. And so I want to just give you a chance. Could you share some of the resources, and we'll include it when we post the podcast, but some of the with the books or courses, if you could just kind of rattle it off for
mm.
folks, because I just want to encourage listeners that this is the kind of work that helps you be you and helps you really feel great about it. And there's just no substitute. Someone else can't do this for you.
Mm.
And I know you've packaged it in a way that it takes people, really through the whole process.
Just go to totalleadership.org. There's all kinds of stuff there. There's free videos, book chapters from all my books, and articles of all kinds, including the 50 plus that I've written for Harvard Business Review, print and digital,
Yeah.
um, and tools, resources, assessment tools that you can use for free. It's all there at totalleadership.org, and you can also follow me on LinkedIn, where
Yeah.
I post occasionally. Uh, Thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One question before we wrap. So you're at this emeritus, very highest of esteem there at the Wharton School. So
No, it's
I
just retired.
I imagine you have a lot of like more things that you can do, right? Then you have time or perhaps interest. So how do you, craft what Stu does or doesn't do?
Well, I think about what's most important to me, and try to make smart choices about what I do with my limited time and attention based on that, and where I think I can evolve as a conscious person uh, from that. So at this stage in my life, it's different, way different than what most of your listeners are probably thinking about. But in my professional life, it's mostly about working with younger people and mentoring them. Uh, Not so much through classroom teaching much anymore, but through helping them on all kinds of different projects or, providing guidance, coaching, and also helping the people in my company, the total leadership company. We've got people now in France and in Spain and in
Wow.
Italy and elsewhere, and also in the States, who are bringing this content to clients and companies. So cultivating the next generation there, and trying to just be a better person around the people that I interact with on a regular basis, including my grandchildren. So I've got grandchildren, and they're a big priority. I'm more serious now about studying piano than I was when I was 8 years old. So I'm doing that, and some other things, including trying to do what I can to help shape the political world in a way that is sensible and humane, in ways that I can do that, and to do my small part in trying to save the planet for future generations. So those are the kinds of things that I'm involved in, and feel very lucky to be making those choices, have the opportunity to make those kinds of choices these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. No, well, and kudos for you for creating the fertile soil to allow those kinds of things to be a part of your
Mm.
life. Okay, so some wrap. So, assuming you are where you are now, do you have a particular do over in life?
Oh my gosh. I think uh, more dedication, more devotion to musical skill.
Mm.
I'd like to be able to beautifully perform a Chopin nocturne. So I am really far from that. Uh,
Mm.
as just one example. So I would like to have more musical skill. This might seem stupid, but that's the first thing that comes to mind.
I
is
love it. I
To
love
be
it.
a serious musician, and that was within my grasp. So now I'm trying. I'm trying to catch up, but and the process of trying, practicing and seeing progress in my skill whenever I practice, that
Mhm.
is very rewarding part of my everyday.
I love that growth. I love that growth. Okay, a you have so many, but a proudest accomplishment, it could be work or personal.
Raising three beautiful people with my wife. I mean, my children. Yeah,
Fabulous. What
yeah.
do you wish for these darling grandkids you have?
Peace, peace, peaceful planet. One that is richly habitable, and in which they can thrive and use their particular gifts to bring joy to the world, and to the people they love. Uh, yeah, freedom and peace, uh, generally and specifically, to be who they are meant to be, and
Mhm.
to find love and support in their discovering that.
I love it. Okay, rapid fire. I think I know the answer to this, but in your next life, your profession would be?
College professor.
Okay, any nicknames you can share for us?
Oh my goodness. Um, well, my favorite one is part of like my deep, deep password, so I'm not revealing that,
That one.
but it's really good. Well, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, they called me Stewie. But if anybody ever addresses me that way, I'll think you're my cousin, you know. So that'll be confusing.
Do you have a favorite food or cuisine?
Uh, Italian food in Italy, there's nothing like it.
Okay. And you've shared a lot. Your top takeaway from listening to yourself
In this hour,
in this particular hour.
you're a gifted interviewer.
We did not see that, people.
No,
And
you did not pay me to say that, but
did not say that.
that's my takeaway.
Thank you. And you have been very generous in going with me on this winding journey. So, what was it like for you today to share your journey with us?
It was fun. You just gave me a lot of room and were clearly curious and followed your curiosity, which is the gift, right? Is to hold back and uh, listen, but still provide some guidance based on what you were interested in hearing about, believing, I think, I infer, that what you're interested in is what other people are going to be interested in, and that's usually the case. I've certainly discovered. So, um, and did I answer your question, or you
You
just
did, and
asked me this?
you have very kind words, and that means a lot coming from you because you are a master at
Mm,
this. And I just have to thank you because you have modeled in say it skillfully fashion how finding your authentic voice, learning how and when to best use it is really life changing, right? Not only benefiting your career, but every single thing you do and all those people around you. So I want to appreciate you for
mm,
being part of the solution, I call it, right? You're a lifelong learner.
mm.
You're helping those fortunate to be around you to embrace learning and growing. And so I want to thank you, Stu, for helping us all to be safe, seen, and heard, and our true and very
Mm.
best selves.
Thank you so much, Molly.
Yeah, I want to share this one quote I pulled from Marcus Aurelius, based on what you had said. If it's not true, if it's not right, do not do it. If it's not true, do not say it.
Mm.
And that's a wrap, folks. I want to thank all of you listening in for joining us. Please be part of the solution and kindly share this show. I want you to amplify Stu's voice, reflect on your own top takeaways. There's lots in here, and know I'm cheering for you to be who you are and to say what needs to be said skillfully so that you and those around you have the shared reality that makes work and life a whole lot better.